Debris and an oil slick spotted where the Egypt Air flight went down. Seats and luggage are seen in the sea off the Egyptian coast, but still no explanation or claim of responsibility.
Also tonight, NHS England sinks £2.5 billion into the red. Fears expressed at the cost of balancing the books.
Having this number of trusts in deficit at this size of total deficit is not sustainable, and it's clear that pressure is mounting on patient care.
Do we want to have any fracking in Yorkshire?
No! Not in North Yorkshire. Protests at a council meeting considering Britain's first fracking site.
And a bull named Ronaldo, beefing up Hereford's bid for Wembley glory.
This is the ITV Evening News with Alistair Stewart and Ranveer Singh.
Good evening. Glimpsed on the open sea, the evidence of tragedy. Aircraft seats, personal property and human remains. It was spotted 10 miles from where the Egypt Air flight last registered on radar. The first hard evidence the jet crashed into the Mediterranean with the loss of 66 lives.
There are still no answers, though, as to what caused the crash. A massive air and sea operation is now underway to locate the cockpit and flight data recorders that could provide vital clues. From Cairo, our senior international correspondent, John Irvine, has the latest.
If there was ever any doubt about the jet's fate, it was dispelled with the discovery of wreckage exactly where the flight path indicated it should be, a few miles south of the vanishing point for Egypt Air 804. The search has been coordinated with the Greeks, and it was their defence minister who went public with the news that a human body part, 2 seats and some suitcases had been found. Across Cairo today, the traditional ritual of Friday worship included prayers for the victims of the crash. This particular mosque was frequented by the plane's captain. Family and colleagues of Mohammed Shukair remembered him and said their goodbyes. Although, as his uncle explained, they still don't know the cause of the disaster.
It crashed, simply crashed. Nobody knows. Where is the plane? Can you know where is it? Nobody knows where it is.
French investigators have now arrived here in Cairo, along with a technician from Airbus. Officially, the French are keeping an open mind. The cause of this tragedy isn't yet known, but because this was an airliner that plummeted into the sea minutes after leaving European airspace and entering Middle Eastern airspace, terrorism will remain the prime suspect until there's proof otherwise. For their part, Egypt Air are saying there's nothing to suggest technical problems.
My first concern is taking care of the passengers. And then we get from our sources the information. We're going to be transparent and we're going to say it.
But you're satisfied your plane was in good shape?
Yes, definitely.
The search is focused on this area 180 miles north of Alexandria. The debris was found 5 miles south of where the plane disappeared, but the search for the black box recorders will be difficult because in places this part of the Mediterranean, called the Levantine Basin, is more than 2 miles deep. The European Space Agency says one of its satellites has seen an oil slick a mile long in the crash area, but it's what lies beneath the surface that the authorities need to get their hands on, and the recovery of those recorders may be a long way off. John Irvine, ITV News, Cairo.
Our correspondent Emma Murphy is in Paris, where the aircraft took off from. Emma, 24 hours on now. What are the authorities saying today about this?
Well, the French authorities are holding on to the line that they took in the very first few hours after the plane vanished, and that is that they are considering all options. They rule nothing in, they rule nothing out. But obviously there is a lot of pressure here. They have said today that the manifest of passengers has been gone through and no one on board matched with any of the names on a terror watch list. Now that we know that debris has been recovered, the French are aware that they will start to get a greater indication pretty soon on exactly what brought this airliner down, and that is so important to them because they will be hoping that perhaps there has been some kind of technical issue here which will exonerate them of any kind of security breach. One thing to mention is that oil slick. It is extremely important and will be crucial in the coming days because if that oil slick is spread out over a large area, it would indicate that there was some kind of explosion on board. If the plane has gone down pretty much intact, that oil slick will be much smaller.
Emma, thank you.
The NHS in England is heavily overspending to the tune of around £7 million a day. New figures reveal the total deficit of nearly £2.5 billion is the biggest in its history, and it shows it's struggling to cope with a squeeze on budgets and soaring demand. As our political correspondent Romilly Weeks reports, there are fears patient care could suffer.
If there was any doubt the NHS was not in good health, these figures put paid to that. A record number of hospital trusts have been pushed into the red, all adding up to an unprecedented deficit of almost £2.5 billion.
There's no doubt that having this number of trusts in deficit at this size of total deficit is not sustainable, and it's clear that pressure is mounting on patient care, and we've treated more patients than ever in the NHS this year, but you can see that the pressure is now really coming on performance, and performance statistics are slowly declining.
The deficit for 2015-16 is 3 times worse than the previous year. 65% out of a total of 240 hospital trusts are in the red, in a year in which NHS trusts spent more than £3.5 billion on agency staff.
More people are being stuck in hospital and having to wait in hospital.
The economists at the King's Fund have done detailed research into what's behind the terrible figures.
At the heart of the deficit is rising demand on the NHS, which the NHS is trying to meet with very, very small or no increases in funding. That's showing up at the moment by hospitals not being able to recruit the permanent staff that they need. They must have the staff on wards ready to treat these additional people, and they're turning to very expensive temporary staff instead. And they're also struggling to discharge patients quickly back into the community.
The financial pressure has already led to key targets being missed, including in A&E, cancer care and the ambulance service. Even trusts like Ipswich, which are performing well, are facing huge deficits.
There are clearly some choices that we do need to make, but I mean, one of the things that I think is incredibly important is that we do retain the quality of the services that we're seeking to provide. Certainly, in my view, I think there are some areas where we could improve on our efficiencies and reduce costs.
The Department of Health says it recognises parts of the NHS are under pressure, but says it's providing intensive support to improve performance, boost efficiency and reduce the use of agency staff. Whatever it's doing, the books are showing pretty definitively it's not enough. And these figures, eye-watering as they are, could have been even worse had hospitals not been under pressure to be a bit clever with their accounting and to cut back on things like maintenance and building projects. Clearly that can't happen every year. After the junior doctors' strike, the ongoing problems with GPs, it feels like the Health Secretary is fresh out of one crisis and into another.
Romilly Weeks, many thanks.
Well, the pressure facing the NHS was seized upon by the Leave campaigners today. Michael Gove warned that staying a part of the EU could see even more demand on our services from higher immigration. The Remain camp, meanwhile, was starstruck, highlighting its support from a number of celebrities and prompting David Cameron to make a slightly awkward Beatles tribute, as our political correspondent Carl Dinnan reports.
According to Vote Leave, when Turkey and 4 Balkan countries finally join the EU, they will add up to 5.23 million people to the population of the UK. And that, said Michael Gove today, would put huge pressure on the NHS.
The idea of asking the NHS to look after a new group of patients, equivalent in size to 4 Birminghams, is clearly unsustainable. Free movement on that scale will have huge consequences for the NHS. There will be a rise in accident and emergency attendances of between 6 and 13 million visits per year. In the weeks ahead,
Vote Leave say that's an increase in demand of up to 57%. Their figures are disputed by the Remain campaign.
Well, I find that fairly baffling, to be honest. We have to remember that overall, immigrants actually have better health than people born in this country of the same age, because immigrants come to work, they're fitter, they don't suffer from long-term chronic illnesses, and they're lower users of services.
Vote Leave's figures also assume Turkey will join soon. Now, both David Cameron and Boris Johnson have said that's not on the cards, although Mr Cameron has also said he supports Turkey's membership. All of which helps make Vote Leave's point that staying in also has its uncertainties. Mr Cameron was visiting the famous Abbey Road studios with Tessa Jowell today, highlighting a call for Britain to stay in the EU from dozens of actors and artists.
Voting to stay in Europe is a vote for a kind of idealism, and that somehow has been eclipsed by various isolationist arguments. Isolationism in the end has to lead to death.
Maybe not exactly the little help from his friends the Prime Minister had hoped for as he left across the famous Abbey Road crossing. Carl Dinnan, ITV News.
Cases of the Zika virus have been confirmed in Africa for the first time. The World Health Organization says there have been at least 200 cases in Cape Verde, an island off the coast of Senegal. Zika can cause babies to be born with small brains.
And a Nigerian girl rescued after being kidnapped by Boko Haram in Chibok in 2014 has met with the Nigerian president. 19-year-old Amina Ali Nkeke was flown to Muhammadu Buhari's presidential palace with her baby. The Nigerian army says a second kidnapped girl, identified as Sarah Luka, has also been rescued.
One woman is critically ill in hospital and 3 others have been hurt in a multiple stabbing at a Sainsbury's car park. A man has been arrested over the attack, which happened in Hampton in southwest London this morning. Richard Pallow is live at the scene. And Richard, you've been speaking to eyewitnesses, I know. What have they told you?
Well, they told me that the suspect, who is a pensioner aged 66, seemed to be specifically targeting women as they walked through this car park and went to shop at the nearby supermarket. Now, they were wounded with slashes across their breasts, their arms and their back. He was allegedly screaming as he did it and brandishing a knife. Now, the 4 women who were attacked are aged between 53 and 71. They don't appear to have been related or indeed to have known the assailant. Now, the most seriously injured of all of those was a 62-year-old lady who I understand lives in a block of flats very close to here. She managed to struggle to a police station, a nearby police station about 100 yards in that direction, to raise the alarm. He has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. But one more line breaking tonight is that he was arrested yesterday on suspicion of assaulting a police officer and carrying a knife. He was then charged this morning and then released before it appears he came here and this happened.
Richard Pallow, thank you.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News, graphic images and no more packs of 10. But will the changes to cigarette packets reduce smoking?
And why you can't beat a bit of bully if you're a fan of Hereford FC. Find out what they could win, and it's not a speedboat, after this short break. Did you get it? Welcome back. Residents of a North Yorkshire village today converged on a council meeting which will decide whether they'll be the first community in the UK to allow fracking. Third Energy is applying to extract shale gas from an existing site in Kirby Misperton. But as Peter Smith reports, the villagers, supported by environmentalists, are demanding it is blocked.
There was one simple message from this protest, and it got straight to the point. The demonstrators were here to be heard, whatever it took. And they were outside North Yorkshire's County Hall, because this planning committee could be the first in Britain to give the go-ahead to a fracking site. But Karen Garrett runs a bed and breakfast just a few miles from where the drilling would start. And away from the crowd, she told me why she's concerned.
I'm trying to look after the future for my daughter. You know, she's 9 years old.
Some people would say that in order for her to enjoy the same lifestyle as you've had, we need to move on with times when it comes to energy.
We certainly need energy, but I don't believe that fracking for gas is the way forward.
Fracking works by drilling into the ground, then pumping in water and chemicals to release gas. But there are concerns the process may cause earthquakes and the chemicals could contaminate local groundwater, affecting what comes out of people's taps. This is the site Third Energy wants to frack. They insist it is safe. Less than a mile away is the picture postcard village of Kirby Misperton. There is a feeling here they're swimming against the tide.
Nobody wants it on their doorstep, do they, at the end of the day? But if they're going to do it, they're going to do it, aren't they? There's nothing we can do, I don't think, to stop it.
It's a further industrialisation of the rural environment, and farming's already gone a long way to create that.
A decision is expected by the council here on Monday. If Kirby Misperton becomes Britain's first approved fracking site, it is unlikely to be the last. Peter Smith, ITV News, North Yorkshire.
A man who scaled a Buckingham Palace wall and trespassed in the grounds is a convicted murderer, it emerged today. Dennis Hennessy was arrested on Wednesday night. As he was jailed for 4 months today, a court heard that he was on licence from prison following the murder of a homeless man in 1992.
And former Spurs player David Ginola is recovering in hospital in Monaco after undergoing a quadruple heart bypass operation. Earlier today, he tweeted that he was fine and just needed rest.
A pack of cigarettes won't look the same from today as new laws on plain packaging come into force. This is what the new packets will look like, coloured a drab green and covered in warnings of the harm cigarettes can do. What is more, they will only be available in packs of 20 in future once current stocks run out. It's all aimed at reducing smoking. 34 billion cigarettes were sold in the UK in 2014. Our consumer editor Chris Choi reports on whether the changes will work.
An everyday scene, but its days are numbered. Because packets of 10 are regarded as an entry point for smokers, they're being banned. In Cardiff tonight, Mavis Hancock, who started smoking at 16, thinks it's going to be worse for her health, and her daughter agrees.
For the older people, I think 10 packs of 10s is better than for your health.
When you've got a 20 pack, you'll end up, as I have sort of do sometimes, smoke more than what she normally does.
New research seen by ITV News shows 24% of cigarette smokers currently buy packets of 10. 55% of those say they'll switch to buying packs of 20. Production of all packs under 20 is banned from today, but there's still a one-year period in which old stock can be sold.
Every cigarette is doing you damage. Now is the time to quit. Chemicals.
Australia was first with graphic warnings on cigarette packs in 2012 and with a ban on packets of 10. Here, health campaigners say introducing a minimum pack size works.
Certainly if we're thinking about children or people on a lower income, they're really going to think twice before buying a packet of 20 rather than a packet of 10.
Surely if people have to buy a bigger packet, they'll end up smoking more cigarettes.
Well, that may be the case, but the point is to make the barrier much higher before people buy them in the first place.
But tobacco firms say the idea's doomed. Isn't there a really convincing health argument here?
Well, this is a directive that actually seeks to reduce smoking, but actually forces people to buy more tobacco, not less. And also, because you're giving a huge boost to the black market, potentially children will have more access to tobacco than they do now.
The trade expects to begin running out of old packs before the end of summer. It's then that smokers will notice some graphic changes in the shops. In Australia, some research suggests that those new standardised packs cut smoking by up to 15%, but the figures are disputed. The impact of banning packs of 10 is even less clear. It's been predicted that stockpiling will delay any effects, but it's already clear this is a major new assault on smoking. And coming next, a ban on menthol cigarettes due in 2020.
Chris, thank you.
Celtic have named former Liverpool boss Brendan Rodgers as their new manager. The Northern Irishman is on a 12-month rolling contract with the Scottish champions.
And finally tonight, Ronaldo is set to make a star turn at Wembley this weekend. No, he hasn't signed for FA Cup finalist Manchester United or even Crystal Palace. He's Hereford FC's prize bull and mascot.
Yes, and he'll be paraded on the hallowed turf ahead of Sunday's FA Vase final when Hereford meet Morpeth Town. And as Ben Chapman reports, it'll be a dream come true for the once famous club, which was reformed just a year ago.
There's nothing ordinary about Hereford's cup final this weekend, and it's not just the enormous and rather temperamental talent posing with the matchday squad this afternoon. The Bulls, as they're known, didn't have a team this time last year.
Radford again. Oh, what a goal!
Hereford United was the notorious giant-killing club who beat Newcastle in one of history's greatest footballing upsets. But 18 months ago, financial problems killed United. So the supporters who staged a mock funeral then started a new club. In its first season, the team's already won 3 trophies and will now take Hereford to Wembley for the very first time. At the same end where that famous goal was scored all those years ago, the man who spearheaded the revival told me how.
The old adage that you don't know what you've got until it's gone. Certainly applied here, but there's a great togetherness now and everybody feels part of it. We had a lot of volunteers here in the summer and throughout the season. They sweep terraces, they sell tickets, they clean toilets, they do whatever they can to help us.
In return, local school children have been coached by the players. 80 pupils at this school alone are preparing to go to the match this weekend. And even though it's only a minor amateur cup final, the club's pop-up Wembley shop has sold more than 1,000 commemorative shirts.
It's Hereford. They've never got that far before, have they?
All the community's got behind the club, and effectively it's their club again.
I cried when the club went, and well, all my life I've supported Hereford. So this season has just been, well, it's beyond anything.
Come Sunday, 20,000 people will fly the Hereford flag at Wembley, more than a third of the city's population. The Bull will be in good company. Ben Chapman, ITV News, Hereford.
And that's it. Next is news at 10.
But from everyone here, have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.